few months ago, I made a video on a third-party Robinhood API, which was a little bit of a workaround to gain programmatic access to placing orders in Robinhood. That was fairly popular since there aren't many brokerages which offer decent API solutions. The other one would be Alpaca, but now there's a new option and they actually decided to sponsor this video. So what I'm going to do is give an overview of their API and a basic implementation of the API, and then also give you some trading strategies that I think could be interesting to explore and hopefully get you excited if you are interested in some form of automated trading or even like a simplified version of quantitative trading using publicly available alternative data. So I'm hoping that this video is a great inspiration or starting point for someone who aspires to get into automated trading or quantitative trading and understand a basic concept of what alternative data sets are and how they could implement those alternative data sets effectively in financial markets if they're looking for something that is completely hands-free and is a strategy that they can automate entirely through something like a programmatic API to place orders, which you can do through Public's website, which I'll leave links to in the description below if you're interested in setting up a brokerage account with them and using their APIs to place orders programmatically. So first, I'll give a basic introduction of what alternative data is. Alternative data is any form of data that's non-financial related information to a public business. So what this could look like is maybe Google Trends interest in a certain company or web traffic or app usage data, anything that might indicate the performance of a company. And when you start to think about alternative data, there are potentially thousands of different data sources that you can use to dictate a trading strategy. So I'm going to give one example in this video, which I think is kind of a cool one, but I'll also show some other ones in just a second. So the one that I'm going to go into in this video is Carvana. And Carvana is a very volatile stock because it's been growing quite a bit and they're selling a lot of cars through their website. But an important thing about Carvana is on their website, when you go to carvana.com, if you just click on search cars, then you will discover this little piece of information here that most people might overlook, which is the total count of cars available on their platform. Now, if you think about this, this gives you a little bit of insight into what their inventory is. And in fact, this number is updated almost in real time. So that means that if you scrape this piece of information on their website programmatically, then you will be able to determine how much their inventory is going up and down over time. And that gives you an estimate of the amount of sales that they're making. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because, of course, this is a publicly available piece of information. Also, I do know for a fact that hedge funds and other people in financial markets already use this information. But that being said, it does not mean that there are not still ways to find profitable strategies using this type of data. So in this video, when showing you a public API implementation, I will be using this Carvana total inventory number as an example of building a trading strategy around tracking how many cars Carvana is selling every single day or every single minute. Then something else I want to show as well is a shout out to someone on Twitter who does some interesting work. If you go on X or twitter.com, there is this Twitter profile, Singularity Research. He makes some cool free public trackers for different publicly available information. So if you're looking for more ideas for starting points of different data that you could collect to build a trading strategy around, I think looking at some of his trackers, for example, here he has a Transmedics revenue tracker. What he does is he looks at publicly available flight data for the flights that Transmedics makes with their airplanes and then estimates revenue based on that flight data. If you're interested in his projects, you can go to his website, which I'll also leave in the description down below, where you can find some of this information. And if you're interested in building a trading strategy around this, I'm sure you can also collect this public information and potentially build your own trading strategy, maybe trading something like Transmedics based on the flight data that he's collecting for free on his website, and it's all publicly available. Now, that being said, I will jump into the code of how to actually implement this into a trading strategy and how you can use this to hopefully make something profitable in financial markets. So what I've got here first is just some of my Python code, which goes into collecting some of this information. So at the top, I have a function called get Carvana total inventory. What this does is when I run this function, you will see that it fetches the exact same information that was available on the website, on the Carvana website. And there are a variety of ways to do this. And depending on the website, there may be different terms of service or robots.txt blocks for that type of information. In terms of the exact way that I'm getting this Carvana number, I recommend that you find your own methods for doing this. Of course, this is publicly available information, so it's all allowed to be collected. The specific way that I did it was by looking at some of the requests that the website makes whenever you're going onto the website, and I was able to locate the place where you're able to get that total inventory number. But I think if you ask something like ChatGPT, you'll be able to get a general idea of how to collect this publicly available information. The only reason I don't disclose the exact method here is in case there's some weird terms of service or requirement on the website where they don't technically allow you to do this, but it is publicly available information, so you can collect it if you like. So essentially what my function is doing here is it's getting that total cars available number from the Carvana website. And then what I can do with that number is I can create a method, I can create a function which essentially checks over the total inventory on a certain interval. So what I'm doing here, I just realized I misnamed the function to CarMax inventory instead of Carvana inventory. But what this does is I can set a certain interval, and then in my code, it calls my function which just returns the total cars available number on a certain interval that I can define within the function. So it's just doing the current total minus the last total, and then gets a delta or percent change based on those numbers, and then prints that out every 20 or 30 seconds. And what that means is I then end up getting this output where every X number of seconds, I can see if the inventory is increasing or decreasing, and also the percent change of the inventory based on that increase or decrease. So again, all I've done here is I've created this basic function where I'm calling my get Carvana total inventory number. I'm saving that variable at the beginning, and then just doing this infinite loop where it first saves the last total, does this infinite loop, and is just checking for any delta or change in the inventory so that I'm essentially tracking the change in inventory over time. And so just to give you an idea of what this looks like, you can see I've set it to 10 seconds, and it's just going to keep running forever and ever, and it'll see the change in inventory for Carvana every 10 seconds. So let's just wait a couple seconds here until it actually picks up on a change, just so that you can see that this is actually working in terms of being able to track the inventory. And in this example, I am using a 10-second interval. So in the video, I'm kind of giving you a high frequency trading strategy. But hypothetically, you don't need to do this as frequently. You could even have some automated process of checking the inventory every day, every week, and looking at the delta of that, also to estimate the total number of sales for Carvana. Of course, the only downside with checking it less frequently is that you might be missing out on the different changes that it has per day, because they might try to balance at a certain inventory level. So let's say that their target inventory is always 52,400, and then maybe it deviates from that at 10 or 20 cars per hour or per every couple minutes. Then you might miss out on a lot of the sales that they're making. But if you're doing something like this, where it's checking it every 10 seconds, you'll see in a couple of seconds, once the inventory changes, that then you'll be able to pick up on those small deltas whenever one car is sold or 10 new cars are added to their inventory. And over time, that will give you valuable information as to how that company is performing. So in this case, I guess we're in a little bit of a dead zone where no cars are being sold or added to the inventory. But then right here, there was just an example where the inventory changed. So Carvana inventory went up by one car, and then you're able to calculate the delta of that change. So it's the percent increase in their inventory by adding that one car. And what's pretty cool about this is even when you loop through this every 10 seconds, you'll start to see more and more, especially over time, where there'll be jumps of 50 cars or 100 cars or 10 cars going up and down. And then you really get an idea of how many cars they're turning over every hour, every couple minutes, and that's valuable information to the performance of the Carvana business. So once you have this information, now you can start to build a trading strategy around it. Basically, you have this information which dictates how well Carvana is doing, so you can create buy and sell orders of the Carvana stock based on if they're selling a lot of cars or if they're not selling a lot of cars. So what I've done here is I have my public API key from my public account, which you can get through their brokerage platform, which I'll leave a link to in the description below. Once you have this API key, and I will disable this API key after the video, but what happens is you just need to get an authentication token from their endpoint. So here I've created a simple function, get access token with validity limit. And what you do here is this just gives you a bearer token that you use as like a temporary key to make further requests when placing orders or getting account information or market information. So all I'm doing here is I am making a post request to their endpoint where I get the access token, and I'm just providing my public API key. And you can see an example of that right here where I call get access token with my public API key, and I provide my expiration, my validity minutes, the timeout number for that token will be active. So once I call this function, you can see here it generates an access token, which I just have in this value right here. And this is then used as a bearer token for authentication in my future requests to the public API. Now, next, I've created a simple client, just a class with all of the necessary basic functions that I'd need to interface with the public API. I will leave also a GitHub link with this code if you'd like to just take it for yourself and use it. But what this is it has basic functions for things like get accounts, place orders, place limit orders, place GTD orders. What this is good to date orders. So if you're looking to place orders outside of market hours, then you can use these place GTD order types. And all this is doing is this is essentially just a class interface to be able to place orders or get basic information from the public API. And again, I will leave this code in the description, so if you'd like to just copy this and use it to place your own orders with your API key, then you can do that as well. So just to test that it's working, here I have an example implementation of using my public client, the class that I've made to interface with my account with my API key. So what I do is first I get my access token from the token response that I had above. So this is where I get my access token. I save my access token in this token response variable. And after I've gotten that access token, and I also make sure that my class has run, then I can now use that to initiate my public client variable. I can get the accounts that are associated with that API key. In this case, I just have one public account. So it just selects the first account available in that account array. And then this places a GTD good to date order on the public platform. And you can look at their documentation for more information on the exact formatting of these orders. But in this case, when I run this function, this has now placed an order. And if I go back to my public account, which I'm looking at on my other screen, I can see that there's a pending order based on that API call. So I've verified that it's working. And so if you're following along with this, then once you've set your API key and you've placed that order, then you can make sure on your account that you see that order as a pending order. And that means that everything has worked with the API. Finally, there is a basic trading strategy that I made around this Carvana inventory tracker. So what happens in this trading strategy is there is a loop, and it is essentially checking for large deviations in the Carvana inventory to determine different times to buy and sell. So of course, this is a trading strategy, which is a bit of a shorter term speculatory strategy where you're essentially saying, as you run this loop, it's just checking, is there a 3% inventory change? And based on that, if there's a 3% increase in inventory, then you sell. If there's a 3% decrease in inventory, then you buy. Because basically they're either selling a lot of cars and you think that Carvana is doing really well, so you want to buy Carvana stock, or if they're adding a lot of cars to their inventory, that means that maybe they're not selling many cars and you want to sell Carvana stock because they're adding a lot of inventory to their total inventory. So when I run this, then you will see the similar loop to before that I showed above, where it gets the initial inventory number, and then every 30 seconds, it's just going to check if that number has changed. And then based on that, it will place those limit orders in your account to either buy or sell Carvana stock. And there's a lot that you can do to adjust this and make this more complicated and back test this strategy. Honestly, what I would do is I would first run this and kind of place paper trades or just log out when it would buy or sell based on the inventory changing, and then look back at the stock price and see if that would have been a profitable strategy based on trading on that Carvana number. And another thing you could do as well is, although this strategy, how I've currently implemented it, is very short term, you could instead take this strategy and make it longer term, where you track the inventory changes throughout a day, and then by the end of the day, you see how many total cars they've sold throughout that day, and then you can use that to either buy or sell in the next day in the market. So there are all these different trading strategies you can make in statistical arbitrage, where you essentially say, maybe if Carvana sold like 5% of their inventory yesterday, then I know that there's an 80% probability that Carvana stock will be green the day after. So you buy it the day after, and then you sell it before market close, and you could make a profitable trading strategy like that. But anyways, this is a general overview into using the public API in order to place orders on your account through their brokerage, how to use alternative data to have a potential profitable trading strategy, and an example of a data set which I've collected just through publicly available information on the Carvana website. And then hopefully you can play around with this and the code that I leave in the description below to build out something that's at least a starting point to get to a point where you can have something running 24/7 that hopefully makes you money if you find some unique trading strategy or statistical anomaly where you notice that a certain pattern in the sales data for Carvana relates to a certain pattern in the stock price. Then potentially you could make a lot of money, and that's exactly what every quant fund does in the world, essentially, when they use alternative data, maybe just to a little bit more advanced scale. But I think this is a really great, fun project to work on, which you can do so easily since you have this API available through public.com. Anyways, thank you all so much for watching. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And I'm excited to keep making more videos like this about cool, novel strategies to automated trading and quantitative trading for people just starting out. Thank you all so much for watching.